Hi and welcome everyone to this edition of the Keptn Community and Keptn Developer Meeting. Today it's August 12th, and as usual, we are doing this as part of the CNCF. We are following here the CNCF Code of Conduct. And this meeting is also recorded and will be uploaded to the Keptn YouTube channel. As always, if you're attending this meeting, please share also your attendance here in this list, and I will also share this in the chat so that you can, here we go, so that you can also add yourself. And before I'm handing over to the Keptn Core maintainers, I would just announce two things. First one is we will be hosting the next Keptn user group on March 17th. That's next Tuesday. And the topic will be how to enable interoperability in CI and CD based on well-defined events, so to say. And we will be doing this together with Maurizio Salatino. He's a staff engineer at VMware, and he's also a member of this Continuous Delivery Foundation, and he will show us his proof of concept with Keptn events, clouded, basically with CDF events that are implemented in Keptn and in Keptn. So we will see the POC on this interoperability layer, which is pretty interesting. So I'm really looking forward to this. Please join us next week, March 17th at 5 p.m. Central European time. And if you can also make it for the next meeting on March 18th, that's next Wednesday, where we are doing a presentation on our incubation proposal in the CNCF, for the CNCF incubation level. We are invited to present in the app delivery tag, and we will be doing this next Wednesday. We will do a presentation there on the project itself, on the incubation proposal, and on our achievements since we're in sandbox status in the CNCF. So this will happen next Wednesday. You will also find a link to the issue and also to the meeting in the app delivery tag via this link, or just Google it and you will find it there. Are there any questions on those two presentations or on those two topics? If not, then I am handing over to the Keptn Core team. And if the list is correct here, it will be Elizabeth.
Yes.
So, stop me sharing.
Yeah. So this I would share my screen. I think that would make sense. So this sprint for me was a bit. I was a bit ill here and there, and had a lot of administrative stuff going on also. So yeah, the contribution for this sprint wasn't that big, but at least I did some bug fixes and a small little feature. So I will just jump to it. The first one is it came up that if you change between settings, the settings were still the same as for the previously selected one. So this is now fixed. The settings now get properly updated. Yeah, the token, I removed it. So it was like, I think, a lot of stars or asterisks in there. But yeah, as we don't know it, I just removed it. You have to reset it if you need to update your data. So the next thing that was also reported is that when you delete a project, for example, from another tab or from the CLI or wherever, there is some sort of inconsistent state here because the project is not updated and you can still view it. Yeah, doesn't make sense. So I will just demonstrate this. So if I go here and delete my Best project. Oh, no, it's gone. And after some, yeah, there you can see in the console already that there is a 4.4, and the behavior is now exactly the same when, like how, yeah, you just don't find any project. So it's basically the same. You get the project doesn't exist error message. So, and the last one, the small feature I worked on is, if you change data, you get now notified about that you have unsafe changes. I didn't want to, how should I say, to guide the user too much, so there is no prevention from navigating away from this page, but at least you get now any notification that the data will not be saved. This also works for creating a new project. So if you have something in here or in here, and if you close it, and it reappears again, also for the Shipyard file. So that just to make sure that the user understands that the data, yeah, will be lost. Yes, so far so good. Are there any questions?
No question, but I'm just thinking about this message now.
Yeah.
And would a user now expect that I can save here in this message box?
I thought about it. Yes. Yeah. So the point is, when creating the project, this wouldn't be a great problem. But what I thought about is that when you're here in the settings, and now the Git upstream is the only setting here. So this wouldn't be, yeah, you click save, the Git upstream gets saved. But if you add more and more settings for the project, which could happen, and you have a save button down there, what will be get saved?
Yep.
So this, I thought about it, and yeah, I think that would be comfortable, but I think also that it could cause a lot of confusion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for create project, yeah, maybe, but how should I say, the button for creating the project is in plain sight. So also you have a bit of a bigger form. So you have to fill in all data until you get down there, and you should, yeah. We can put it in if the users say that it would make sense. But for the settings, I wouldn't recommend it, because yeah, if we add functionality there, then it will get really confusing.
I think the message is good enough, just to inform the user that the data is not saved automatically, but he has to click on the save button. But he will see that there is either some required fields missing or something like that before he can save the project or create the project. I think that's good. So,
when do you actually receive this notification? As soon as you start typing?
Yes, for now, yes.
I think that's a little bit odd.
Yeah.
I would assume you get something like such a message if you want to try to navigate away from that page. Then it would inform you, hey, you have changes. Would you like to keep it or save it or something like that? And not because you as a user, you are usually aware of what you're doing right now, and you get immediately such a message.
I know.
I think it's
yes, I know, but how should I say? How should I say?
then you would have to prevent him from navigating and ask him before he can navigate.
Yeah, I don't
think that would not be convenient.
Also, you have to think about that our user group is pretty used to working with these systems, so it's not like a user that you have to guide on every step. So I have to admit, I already implemented it, and then I found that I don't know. So I didn't feel comfortable with this. So preventing the
Okay.
user from navigating away. So because I felt a bit annoyed. So if I am in the settings and then want to switch because I somehow did not write, and then I have to click 5 dialogues to get away. I don't know if this is comfortable. Yeah, it's the answer to everything. It depends, I think, a bit
I
on
also think
how
it
the
dep-
user,
also
who the
think it,
user is.
I also think it depends a bit on personal opinion.
Yeah,
But for
that's
me,
also.
I never saw it in a web user face that when you start typing, then you immediately get, oh, you're typing. Do you want to save or something like that?
I also thought
So-
about to implement at least a debounce time, that when you type that you have some sort of delay that it appears after a few seconds or so. So this we could do this. Yeah. But I would say, yeah, let's talk about this, and I will work in the feedback. I think I can clarify something also. So yeah.
Maybe there's also some kind of UX best practice on such things. I don't know.
Yes, I orientated a bit on that
Okay, thanks.
too. Yeah. Okay. Any questions, remarks? Otherwise, I will hand over to the next one, that is Ermin.
Thanks. I'm going to present today 2 pull requests. I think the first one, I'm not sure if I presented it last sprint already, but back then probably just the buttons without real functionality. Now we have this feature also implemented in our Keptn core, so you can pause, resume, and abort sequences. And yeah, for this we added buttons to the bridge, so you can pause, resume, and abort sequences from Keptn's bridge. Actually, in the pull request itself, I'm missing a screenshot, but as always, I'm going to do a live presentation. And as you can see, I have here some sequences opened. Like you can see, I have here a delivery sequence, which is paused. That's why it shows me a resume and then abort button here. I just triggered another sequence also. It should appear in a few seconds. And then we will see, yeah, here it is. It's started. And of course, I can click either here in the details screen or here on the left side on pause. In that case, the currently running task will finish. And then the sequence will stop, so no further tasks will be executed. In that case, when the sequence is paused. We can, of course, resume it again from here, or I can also abort the sequence, and I will do it with the paused one. So if I choose to abort it, I get asked if I'm sure if I want to abort the sequence, and when I click on abort, then as you can see, the finished event comes in and it says the sequence is finished because I aborted it, yes. Yeah, as we can see here for the sequence that I paused, the deployment finished and no further tasks are now executed, but I can also click on the resume button and then it should, in a few seconds, probably refresh and trigger the next task, I hope. Yeah, here it is. Of course, the polling in the Keptn's bridge, there was a small delay, but as you can see, it just resumed the sequence. And yeah, of course, now it goes on in the staging stage. Yeah, that's all about pausing, resuming, and aborting sequences from the Keptn's bridge. Are there any questions here? If not, then yeah, I'm going to show you one more UI enhancement, which is a rather small one. It's about preventing expanding empty tiles. So we have some places in Keptn's bridge where we have such expandable tiles, and it happens that they are empty, so we don't have any details to show there. And in that case, it was still expandable, but when you click on it, then you had an empty screen. I think in the issue you can see it. For example, no, this is the wrong. For some reason, the wrong issue is linked here. But yeah, anyway, I can show you a demonstration just how it looks now, I hope. If the Keptn's bridge is updating. And yeah, when we have, for example, a look at the services screen here. Oh, I guess caching issue, just a moment. Yeah, here I can show you that the previous version, how it was. So here we have the cards.db service, for example, and we have here an empty tile. And in this case, it was still expandable, but you don't get any details here. And now the new version, yes, this is the new version. So in case if there is no details for this expandable tile, then this button is disabled and you cannot expand it. But for example, the cards service has deployments, so it's expandable. The same thing happens also in the environment screen. Here we have the same expandable thing, but in case that there are no problems or failed quality gates or open approvals, then it's not expandable. So disabled in that case. Yeah, actually that's all from my side.
What's the green loading bar on the top? Is that also new? I see this the first time. When does it appear? That one, yeah.
That one.
Good question where they're disappearing. We had that one.
Is it appearing every time Keptn refreshes the page?
Yes,
It's for
I hope
every
not.
call,
Yeah.
for every.
and I
Yes, it should be called.
also already filed an issue because I think it's very distracting.
Yeah.
And it should also appear on the first fetch or when additional data that is needed is fetched and not on every poll. So yeah, there is already an issue for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I hope that answers the question. If there are no further questions, I'm handing over to Klaus.
Okay, thanks. Let me show the screen. Okay. So for me, the first thing I want to mention is the null check I did in the HTML files. In the sprint before, we added a null check for all DebScript files. And now we also added a deb and null check for HTML files, because before it was possible to assign every type to a component or have null references or possible null references. And yeah, now we added the strict templates rule for Angular, and now the compiler complains if there are any possible errors. Yeah, that was this issue. Next to that, we now have an indicator for unread error events. So where is it? Here. If we have unread error events, there is an indicator on the left, and also an indicator for the integration. So, and the counter how much unread events there are. So, and if I select the integration. There's also an indicator for the messages or the error events that I didn't read. And yeah, if I switch to another integration, this one is updated, and yeah, the indicator is gone. Also, yeah, only new logs are shown. So for example, this is my example service I created, and there are read 2 of them, but there is one new that has been added. And if I read all of them, then yeah, also the indicator on the left is removed.
How do you mark a log as read, already read?
I have as read. I just have a cookie or an element in the storage that has a timestamp in it. So for each integration, I have a timestamp, and then I check if it's after this timestamp, then it's a new error event.
Okay.
Yeah, and also yeah, there's a polling from on the left side for the error events. So this egg indicator here is appearing or fetched every 30 seconds, I guess. Yeah, then we also have a new endpoint on the bridge server side where we just get true or false if there are any new events. Next to that, we also adjusted the update message. For demonstration, I set the version to 0.7.1, and previously we got all versions that were higher than the versions we have in the cluster. And now only the latest patch version and the latest minor version is shown in the update message. Yeah, and that's basically it. Do I have some? Wait, there's one small thing for the SLI breakdown. We now have an additional column that shows the weight of the SLI. Yeah, and we can also sort by weight. Yeah, and yeah, that's basically it. Okay, that's from my side, I guess. Yeah, so we'll hand over to Flo.
All right, thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, then go on.
All right, then I'll continue. Just a moment. All right, let's have a look. Today I want to show you 3 things that I worked on. So actually the first one was also about the feature of supporting pausing, resuming, and aborting task sequences. So actually Ermin just did a great job in showing you this feature from a user perspective. I just want to show you how this was enabled in the backend. So actually, in the Shipyard controller, we have a new API endpoint. Let me just show you this in the Swagger UI. So here in the sequence section, in addition to the sequence get endpoint that we already had in place, we now added a post endpoint for the sequence in a certain project for a certain Keptn context. So here we have the ability to control. The endpoint itself is actually quite simple. So you just have to provide the project, then the context of the sequence, and then the sequence control object, which optionally contains a stage. So it is also supported to just pause or abort or resume a sequence in a certain stage. And then of course, so either for a specific stage, or if you leave that empty, then all the sequences in all the stages that are part of the Keptn context are affected. And then with the state, you just control what you would like to do. So you can either set it to pause abort or resume. Yeah, I think I can spare you the details of going through the code in the Shipyard controller, because otherwise we will be here tomorrow. But are there any questions about this API?
So usually you use the stage field here when you're unsure in what stage the current sequence currently is running, or is this correct? That's a use case for it. If you have a sequence with a certain context, you know the context, but you don't know the stage of the sequence.
Yeah.
Then you just don't pass a stage.
Exactly, yeah. But for example, if you have a sequence that runs in parallel on multiple stages, and for example, you have the need to, for other sequence in one of those stages to take over because, for example, a remediation has to be performed immediately, and you don't want to abort all the, or you don't want to block all the other stages, then it would be possible to just pause the sequence execution in that specific stage, and the other stages would still continue with that sequence. Does that answer your question?
Thanks.
All right. Okay, if there are no further questions about that, let's continue with the next one. So that was a bug fix. Let me just open it here. So this was affecting the rate limiting in the auth endpoint. So just a quick recap, because I'm not sure if that feature was discussed in a previous meeting already. So basically, we had the requirement of implementing a rate limiter for the auth endpoint in order to avoid brute force attacks where in order to guess the correct API token. And in a previous version, we did it in a way that, or one other requirement here was also that we just applied a rate limiting for failed authentication request. The reason behind that is that pretty much every request that gets to the API from outside, so for example, when the bridge wants to load the current state of all the projects and the sequences of those projects, obviously a lot of requests at the same time have to be sent. And if we would also apply the rate limiting for requests containing a valid token, then of course the bridge would quickly run into rate limits and wouldn't work properly anymore. And that's why we had this additional requirement. But now let's actually have a look at the pull request, or the code of the pull request, to explain the problem. So at the left side, you see the previous version where the naive implementation, so to speak, where the first intuitive approach was implemented. So since only the failed authentication request should be throttled, we first checked the token, whether it was valid or not. And if it was invalid, then we basically applied the limiter using the limiter library of the Go language. So that's actually a really nice library to do exactly that. So we don't need any external libraries or our own implementation for that. But anyway, if we so basically we apply the limiter per IP address. And if the limiter decides that a certain rate has been exceeded, so for example, 1 request per second, then it immediately returned HTTP 429, which means too many requests response. And yeah, and then the client or the caller of the API knew that it sent too many requests. But the problem here was that actually we did the token validation here before we applied the limiter, and that indirectly would mean that the 429 error was automatically the information that the token was invalid. So basically it's a 401 plus 28 response, because yeah, in that case we just incremented the status code value. And that's why we changed the logic here a little bit. So basically what we do now, when an auth request comes in with a certain token, we first get the limiter, then we apply it. And if the rate has been exceeded, we again send the HTTP status. And but the difference here is, as you can see, we didn't do any token validation yet. So meaning that with this new with the status code 429, the caller now cannot automatically assume that the token was wrong. Afterwards, if the limiter allows the request to be handled, then we validate the token, and then if the token was actually valid, we clear the bucket for the IP address the request was coming from. And then, so this way we don't limit the number of authenticated or properly authenticated requests anymore if they, after the first accepted auth request. But otherwise, for example, if you would send a lot of invalid auth requests, then the rate limiter would obviously apply. And then if it's if the rate limiter is applied and doesn't allow any requests to be passed, then this would also mean that if you by accident sent indeed a proper API token and guessed it correctly, in that case, you would very likely also get the too many requests response, even though the token was guessed correctly. So using this logic, we can now more efficiently prevent those kind of attacks. All right, that was a lot of talking. Are there any questions about that? All right, if not, let's continue with the last one. So this was about the crash in the Shipyard controller. Yeah, this isn't all too exciting to fix for that. So basically it was a null pointer exception because we tried to access an error object that wasn't there. And that has been fixed. That has also been covered by a new unit test in order to make sure that we don't run into this problem anymore. All right. If there are no questions about that, I will hand over to the next one. All right.
Thanks. So 1 moment. So I'll just present you 3 issues. The first one, let me do that aside here, has to do with approval tasks within Keptn. So as you probably know, we have something called a sequence timeout. So if you send out a triggered event for a task and you don't get a task started event, then the sequence will automatically actually time out, and that was a problem for approvals, as you can see here in the issue. The approval step was constantly actually then timing out because it's in the nature of an manual approval step that you don't get a started event immediately from the approval service and so on. The fix for this was rather simple. If you take a look at the code, then we see here in the approval service that we are adding an additional check for the input events if the approval .pass is has the strategy manual, or warning also has it has the approval strategy manual, then we immediately send a started event so that Keptn then knows that although the approval step is set to manual, it was actually started, and this will prevent this sequence from timing out. Around this, I've also adjusted integration tests that covers this aspect, and I think I already also forgot one integration test, and Florian helped me out here and also fixed one integration test that was broken by this, but now it's again working, and yeah, approval tasks will not lead the sequence to timeout anymore. That was the first one. If there are no question, I continue with the second one, the CLI support for controlling task sequences. We already saw from Airman that you now can control task sequences, meaning that you can pause, resume, and abort those things. So there are now actually 3 possible ways to do this. You can, as Ermin showed, use the bridge for this. You can, as Florian showed, use the API directly for this. And to be complete, you can also use the CLI to control the sequence. So now, unsurprisingly, we have here Keptn pause or resume or abort sequence command. You give it the Keptn context, and you can also then let these commands control the sequence from the CLI. And the last thing I want to talk about is the removal of an endpoint from the Keptn APIs. Was this one. So previously we had this /config/bridge endpoint where you could actually retrieve or modify the credentials for the Keptn's bridge. Security-wise, it was of course a problem because this way you could very easily leak your credentials for the bridge, which is obviously not very nice. So we've decided to completely remove these endpoints from Keptn. So there is now actually no possibility anymore to issue this command and expect that you would get back credentials from the bridge. Also, if we take a look at the pull request, you will also not find this endpoint in the Swagger specification anymore. If you, however, execute Keptn configure bridge like you would usually do, what you get back is not the credentials anymore, but you can get back, so to say, a guidance how you can get to your credentials or how you can modify your credentials if you have the right to do so. Meaning, if you have kubectl available, then it gives you the command you need to issue. You can do it, for example, here for the username. If I put the command here, it will give you back the username for the bridge. Same for the password. Furthermore, it will also guide you a little bit on how you can actually modify the secret which is behind, which is hosting these credentials. Actually, of course, you also do it with our kubectl, and it will also guide you what you need to do afterwards. You need to roll out restart, so to say, the Keptn bridge, so that it takes over the new credentials. Yeah. So what's here still open is actually 1 or 2 places in the documentation. I think in the tutorial and in the Keptn documentation, we need to adjust this there as well. When we have the new documentation for the upcoming version available, we'll do this.
Bernd, actually, it's already created the folder for 0.9.x.
Okay, then we'll do it today or next week, so that users are not confused that this command isn't there anymore. So security-wise, it's better. For usability, it's a little bit a downgrade, of course, but I think it's wise to not just put out the credentials on the terminal. And that's already it from me. I think there's nobody in the queue to present, or Johannes, you have something? Okay.
Yeah, I just added myself.
Good.
1 second. Just a minor, but since this request came in now a couple of times, I just want to mention it, that now the documentation also explains you how you can use open OAuth and an OAuth provider in combination with the Keptn's bridge. Well, this feature was implemented by an external contribution by Kavindo, who did a great job on explaining the entire OAuth flow, starting from the bridge UI over the backend, then to the OAuth service, which sits in between the bridge and the OAuth provider, and then this provider that does the authentication. He already explained that here very well. And a little bit further down, he also lays out how you can write your own OAuth service. Therefore, he provided the Swagger documentation and he explains the endpoints that are needed to support that. And what I basically did, took over his description here on the issue and also provided or added it to the documentation of Keptn. And when you go to the Keptn's bridge, you see next to the basic authentication also the OAuth authentication, how you can implement it in your Keptn installation. All right, this is just want to point it out since on the Keptn help channel, this request or this sometimes questions are appearing around this mechanism. All right. So I think we are now at the end. I also want to say really great with the new features that are coming. Really looking forward to test them out and to see them. Also, the community is looking forward since I know that a couple of those issues are requested by users and are waiting for. Okay, any questions? If not, then I think we'll close this meeting for this week. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for all the presentations of the issues and features. And stay tuned and see you the next time next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.